Hello and welcome. My name's Mark Reed. I have the pleasure of being your host today on the marvelous magic arc ride that is geology, young Earth creationism, and the flood mythology. And with me are two amazing people. It's my pleasure to have on Dr. Deino and Beamsy. How are you? How are you?
Doing okay. Had a
Same
bit of
old, same old.
coffee, so I'll be up like 3 a.m.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I probably wouldn't have coffee that late, but you do you, boo. You do you. And I did want to tell you, Dr. Dino, that Dr. Dino is actually taken. I think somebody has been using that for quite some time, but look, I'm happy for you to rip him off. He rips everybody else off anyway.
I was gonna say,
But
too bad. Mine's spelled different. It's fine.
yeah, well, that is true. That is true, and maybe you can just claim parody or something, maybe. So I don't have a lot of geological knowledge. Like, it's not a subject that I've delved into. But if you do want to, Dr. Dino, first maybe introduce yourself and sort of what are your credentials and how do you approach this subject? Like, so what sort of I guess position in life are you approaching it from?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Well, as a young lad, I absolutely loved dinosaurs, loved Jurassic Park, loved going out and fossil hunting whenever I could. That continued into high school, did a ton of science courses, maybe a few too many, and then went off to college. Professors were fun, loved my classes. Unfortunately, I started college in 2019, so certain world events happened.
Yeah, that's rough.
I still enjoyed it for the most part. Right now, I'm kind of debating if I want to go to grad school or start a career. Kind of leaning towards grad school at the moment. But for now, I'm just starting up a channel to talk about geology and paleontology. And that's me.
Awesome. And Beamsy, maybe fill us in on where you're coming from.
Well, I don't know as much information as Dino because I actually lost most of my memory after a little incident. But because of a lot of things I keep getting up to, people keep saying I got rocks on my head, so I started just studying geology to understand what's going up in there. I ended up with a Bachelor's Geoscience from the University of Queensland and Master's of Science in Earth Structure and Dynamics from the same place. And last year I ended up with my Doctorate of Geoscience and Physical Geology from the University of New South Wales.
Congratulations. Dr. Beamsy.
Please don't. I don't think I deserve that title.
Why not? Why don't you think you deserve the title?
Because I don't work in the field as much, and I only did it for my own interests. I didn't actually do it for anything other than my own interests.
Well, that hardly matters. But, if you don't want the title, then, I'm certainly not going to force you on it. I just found it interesting. But yeah, so we have today with us like some people that actually know what they're talking about. So we're going to be talking about some of the common arguments presented by young Earth creationists and what the sort of field of geology says about that, how we sort of know whether their claims have any validity or whether they don't. So what's the biggest one that you guys hear that has you face palming? Like, what's the biggest sort of young Earth creationist evidence that has you going, that's ridiculous?
Anytime they claim anything supports the global flood, like genuinely.
The one that gets to me is all of these rock layers were laid down by water all over the Earth, proves the global flood.
Geology. So both of you basically, flood geology is what sort of makes you sort of say, hey, that cannot, that is a face palm.
It's because many levels of the strata is not laid down by liquid suspended sediment. A lot of it is air-blown sediment, as well as you've got the igneous layers and the incursions.
Okay, so wind-blown sediment, I understand what that is. What was the thing? The igneous
layers and incursions.
Incursions. So what are incursions?
Do you want this one, Dino, or leave it to me?
Actually, I'm not entirely sure what you mean. Might just be a
When the slits,
terminology difference.
when a slit is opened up and a dike is made, and then it creates a slit within the layers.
Oh, yeah, okay. A sill, a
Yeah.
volcanic sill. Yeah, sometimes just due to uplift or things happening, cracks will form between sedimentary layers, and magma can squeeze in there.
That's an incursion.
Okay, sorry?
That's an incursion, what Dino just described.
Okay, so
cracks we call them intrusions. Right.
Okay, so it's just a terminology. Is there a lot of terminology differences? Maybe it's Australian terminology versus US sort of terminology?
I think that will be a little bit of a problem, because I have encountered issues with a lot of the terminology talking to a couple of American geologists.
Yeah.
But that's when cracks open up in rocks, and then magma, which is underground lava, if I remember correctly. That's the molten rock that is underground, sort of form in those cracks, and then I presume it cools, making some form of igneous rock, right? So rock that is molten lava or magma that has cooled.
Yeah.
Example of it would be granite.
Yes.
Granite, right. So granite, I believe, is slow cooling igneous rock. It's cooled over a long amount of time, or a sort of mid to long amount of time.
Yeah, we're talking thousands to tens of thousands of years, depending on the size.
Right, and we know that because of
the size of the particular. Yeah, the crystals and the particulates within the structure of the granite itself. The larger the structure, the slower it cooled.
Right, because that's because crystals grow, right, when it cools. So the larger the crystals, the more amount of time it takes to...
Exactly.
Right.
And also, not only that, but just based on the size of a granite batholith, that's a mound of magma turned into granite, we can calculate how long it would have taken for it to cool down from a molten mass, just based on the rock surrounding it.
Okay, so these cracks that you're talking about, these incursions or intrusions, depending on terminology. So how do they? So what rock are they usually in? Are they usually in igneous rock, or are they in metamorphic, or can they be in any form of rock kind of thing?
I mean, they can pop into any form of rock. You just need a source of magma nearby.
Right. Okay. And so how do they show you that flood geology isn't true, is false kind of thing?
The sheer magnitude of time that is required for those features to actually occur.
Right. So it's more about so because this is the thing, we know that sediments can be deposited by water, but just because sediments are deposited by water doesn't mean it happened on a global scale.
Right, and maybe...
So that's more directed at young Earth creationism in general, rather than...
yes.
Right.
So these intrusions are more geared towards young Earth creationism, because when we see one of these volcanic intrusions, we can date it. And they can be however many millions of years old, or they can be recent, but just about any date that you can find from them is going to preclude the young Earth model. And these are intruding into existing layers. Like, they're filling gaps in existing layers, so the intrusion has to be younger than the layer it's intruding into.
Right. Okay, so that rock had to be there before those cracks formed. Right, that makes perfect sense. Okay, that's fair. So we can date that rock as at least old as... Well, it has to be older than the intrusion. No, I gotcha.
Yeah, first the sediment. Say if you have a sampling of entirely sedimentary layers, and then you find an intrusion into it, that rock had to have been lithified completely before that intrusion would have had to have occurred.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just sort of reading here. They seem to think that folded rock layers prove a young Earth. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Folded rock layers. Maybe they're trying to blame soft sediment deformation.
Yeah, the folds we find in these sediment layers, when a hard rock is bent or folded, it invariably fractures and breaks because it is brittle. Only unhardened rock can bend when it is soft and pliable, plastic, like modeling clay. When water deposits sediments in a layer, some water is left behind, trapped between sediment grains. As other sedimentary layers are laid on top and the pressure squeezes the grains closer together and forces out much of the water. As the sediment layer dries out, the chemicals that were in the water between the grains convert to a natural cement. This cement transforms into an originally soft and wet sediment layer into hard, brittle rock. This process can occur within hours, but generally takes days or months, depending on the prevailing conditions. However, it doesn't take millions of years, even under today's slow geologic conditions.
Okay, so at least the last half of what you said was mostly technically true.
Yeah.
But there's one thing they don't take into account. When you put a rock under a ton of pressure, like say, I don't know, 3 miles beneath your crust, it also gets very hot. And when a rock is squeezed and really hot, it's a lot more flexible than it is at the surface. It's like trying to bend a bar of iron versus trying to bend a bar of iron that's glowing yellow.
Right. I think that they sort of say that though that would have caused changes in the texture of the mineral and the sort of the type of minerals in the rocks. So what would you say to that? That we don't detect that in the rocks? Do we detect these changes that they say should happen? Should we detect these changes that happen in the heating of the rock?
I mean, it can happen, and we can measure when it does happen. There's a whole category of rocks called metamorphic rocks, but it doesn't always happen or have to happen.
If you actually have watched some of the pressure channels, if you've ever seen them actually put a rock under an extreme amount of pressure, it goes fairly plastic before it shatters.
But is that something we should see in these rocks? Is that something that we would be able to detect after the fact?
It depends on the situation. It's very situational. If
Right.
it has remained as the same mineraloid and it is just bent, you will actually notice fractures in it. As if you look up any of the features, a lot of them you can see massive fractures all the way along the features because
Right.
it was only placed under extreme pressure, which allowed it to go plastic before it was actually bent. If
So
it went
this
to
evidence. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Beamsy, go for it.
in some cases, some of them are partially metamorphosized, so you could actually see different types of rocks within the single layer. That's another way that happens. That means it had enough heat to change some of the rock, but not enough to change the entire sample of rock. And sometimes it's completely metamorphosized, and that is the easiest to explain because it got hot enough that to change its chemical compound, that of course it would actually bend very easily.
And then it changes into metamorphic rocks, which is metamorphic rock is sedimentary rock that has been subject to extreme heat and pressure, making it into another type of rock.
Igneous rock can also be, igneous can also be metamorphic.
Yep.
Right.
And would you mind
if I remember correctly, any rock can. Yeah, I do. As far as I recall, any rock can be metamorphized into any other type of rock. So sedimentary into igneous into metamorphic. Yeah, as far as I recall. Sorry, did you want me to share that?
Yes, please. The second
okay, sure.
one I sent.
Sure. Oh, the second one. Oh, sorry. I've got the first one. My bad.
Yeah.
I'm a professional. Trust me. Just trust me on this.
The one that has static flicker in its URL.
Yes. Gotcha. That one. Okay, so what is that?
So this is a type of rock called a garnet schist. Schist is generally derived from things like mudstone, stuff that has a lot of wide platey minerals. When they're subjected to a ton of pressure, the plates all sort of align so as to minimize pressure on their surfaces.
Right,
And so we
right.
get this really shiny looking rock.
Mm-hmm.
And we can measure how well they're aligned. I believe the thing we measure is actually called their schistosity. Like they'll go from a relatively drab rock to a more and more, well, looking like this.
Right.
This is a very classic metamorphic rock. You can find a lot of gemstones and stuff like schist.
So what's the areas of red in it?
Those are garnets.
Those are garnets. Okay.
Yes.
So this is a sedimentary rock that's been subjected to an incredible amount of pressure, and is it because a schist is a type of rock, isn't it? That is
Yes.
a metamorphic rock. Am I right
Yes.
on that? So this is a sedimentary rock that's been subjected to a massive amount of pressure. These platings on it have aligned because of the pressure, and so we can tell that it was once a sedimentary rock that had been metamorph.
Yep.
Is it fully metamorphized, or is it just partially?
Depends on how metamorphosed it's been. Well,
That particular one
It's
looks
a
like
bit
it's
hard to say.
completely. Yeah, that
Yeah.
particular sample looks completely metamorphosized.
yeah, there are
Right,
different degrees. It's a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm. So that explains the folds in the earth. You don't always need water. So so you said that some of what they said was correct, that you can get these folds through having water in the rock. Is that fair to say?
Sort of. I was mostly referring to sedimentation rates. Stuff
Okay.
like that. Now that said, there are some weird looking structures you can get. As an example, I'll send you another link. Sometimes
please,
you
yeah.
can have stuff deposited on a slope underwater, and due to, say, an earthquake or some other disturbance, the sediments on top will just kind of slide down and smush together. We call that soft sediment deformation.
Soft sediment deformation. Right. So
Yeah.
this is the kind of, okay, gotcha. Yep.
It's kind of cool to see.
But
Yeah,
as you can see, it looks very different to what a folded rock looks like.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. No,
And
I
also you
gotcha.
can see it has those flat horizontal layers below and above it, showing that this wasn't a common occurrence in the area.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And so, how long would a formation like this take to accumulate and then form this shape?
It can happen in seconds or minutes.
Okay. Yep.
Well, so you have the layers gradually being deposited. Some are going to, those at the bottom are going to be more rocky than others. And you can sometimes have a disconnect between the rocky layers and the more soft layers. So then, like I said earlier, the soft layers are disturbed. They just kind of squish down the slope, and you get these shapes.
Right. And so they're sort of seeing folding caused by these soft sedimentary layers, and then sort of extrapolating that to all folding anywhere in any rock, without actually understanding that folding can occur, and the type of folding that we see with these fractures and partially metamorphized rock over pressure and heat rather than with water. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
In addition to what Beamsy was saying earlier, we have lots of rocks, sedimentary rocks, that aren't deposited by water at all. In the first link I sent is a very famous fossil that was deposited in windborne sediments. It's actually
the fossil?
Cool.
Oh, okay. So the sediment around it. Sorry, I thought the fossil. I'm like, how did the fossil get carried by the wind? Sorry, that's my, as I said, I'm not a huge geology or paleontology person, I must admit. But no, I gotcha. So this is a fossil, but so how do we know that that sediment was carried by the wind rather than deposited by water?
All right. Well, so this isn't just an isolated rock. This is from a formation. And in that formation, we have tons and tons of sand dunes. We have sand dunes, we have roots from land plants,
Okay,
and
what
we
a
have
roots, yeah, gotcha.
specimens of land animals. In this case, these two dinosaurs. As far as we can tell, what happened is they were fighting to the death, and a sand dune collapsed on top of them, burying them mid-fight.
Okay, well, I know, I don't even have to look at it. I know what the explanation from the flood explanation is that they were like covered in sand that was borne by water. So is there any way that we can tell that this wasn't sort of, you know, a flood that covered them in sort of sediment being carried by some kind of water?
The actual shape of the sediment within the strata itself, waterborne sediment, especially sand, it will always be rounded, whereas in airborne sediment usually is squarish. It's got more of a jagged edge to it.
Yeah. Yes. Water transported sediments often show a lot more erosion than windborne sediments, because in windborne sediments they can just like break off and fly all over the place. Waterborne, they're all flowing in the same direction and grinding against one another constantly.
So it's yeah, like just like rocks and things in the ocean or the rivers, they're always rounded, always, you know, just sheer water erosion.
Most of the time, yeah.
It's because of the constant all-around erosion rate, whereas in the wind is uneven in its erosion. So you might get one face eroded flat, and then it might get buried or under the wind, and then it flips over, and then again. So that's why they're usually an odd shape. They're with sharp edges. I describe them as squarish, but some of the shapes are just very strange. Whereas because of the even and constant erosion that you get with waterborne sediments, most times they're a lot rounder. That's why you can tell the difference between a rock you get on the side of the road and a river rock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like I said, these are from a formation that has all the signs of being land-based, that's deposition, and basically none at all of water deposition. This was a desert.
Okay. But I mean, just because it was a desert now doesn't mean it was a desert forever, right?
Well, it was a desert then and now. I could be wrong, but I think the current environment of the area is almost identical to when these two were alive.
But it is an amazing snapshot in history when you think about it.
Yes.
Yep. I just want to talk for a second about one that I've heard from a certain person, Beamsy's a real fan, about the formation of the Grand Canyon happening within a week. I think we've all heard it. I'm not sure if you've heard it. It's another Dr. Deino.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Sort of says, yeah. I'm sorry to pain you so like seriously. I it's just
it's why I'm here.
sort of. Well, I mean, sort of. I know that sounds ridiculous to me. That sort of water can cut through rock within a week. So what evidence do we have that the Grand Canyon formed over millions, if not billions, of years rather than a week?
Horseshoe Bend.
Horseshoe Bend. You're gonna have to elaborate on that one, mate.
There you go. That's a good image of it.
Okay.
If you've ever seen water flowing, it flows.
What's a good image of it?
I just
gotcha. Yep, gotcha.
If water is eroding something, well, it's a simple experiment that you usually do in the first year of it. You go to a slope, usually made of sand, and pour water down to it. What shape does it make?
I mean, it's just straight kind of thing.
Yes, if it was cutting through soft sediment, it would just create a straight line.
Yeah.
How do features like that occur? It literally bends nearly 290 degrees.
Well, I presume, I mean, from my limited understanding, I presume that there is harder rock and softer rock. The river erodes, or the water erodes the softer rock, and makes a slight change, making it lower, and then it naturally follows that lower water course.
That works in the way that geology works, in the time that it follows the weakest points, as a river would do.
Mhm.
But if all of this was laid down within a period of time, it would all be
Yeah.
an equal level of resistance. So what would create the bend, especially with the velocity in which the water would need to be traveling to form a feature like that in 1 week?
Mm.
Mhm.
So you're really talking about, if it was laid in 1 week, it would be more like a water cutter, one of those things to cut sort of metal kind of thing using sand and water, rather than the bending that we see here.
If you want to see exactly what would happen, look up the Missoula flood and the Scablands. That's exactly what would happen if a massive amount of water comes flowing through an area.
Yes. I was if you hadn't brought that up, I was going to bring it up.
Missoula floods and
yes.
Scabland.
Just a little bit of background for people. The Lake Missoula flood is what happens when you have a gigantic dam, a gigantic glacial dam break, and unbelievable amounts of water just explode towards the ocean.
It quite literally ripped off all the sedimentary layer, all the layers on top of the bedrock, and it decimated all of the entire region.
Just dragging away boulders bigger than a house. Oh, it's awesome.
And there are
Okay.
wave features that you can actually see, like down on the beach. You can see areas where there were waves.
Mm-hmm.
And normally they're only a couple of centimeters high. The ones in Missoula are meters tall, and
yeah, they are small hills stretching across the landscape.
And is caused by the wave motion of the water.
Mm-hmm.
But there is still a river, a Palusi River, I think.
There's still a river there.
Yeah.
The Snake Canyon goes through. Oh no, Palusi River goes through Snake Canyon, if I remember correctly.
Okay, I think I've got a really good picture of what they're describing here. So, let me show that. Oops.
Well, apparently Google
Sorry.
categorizes the Missoula flood as a cataclysm. Yeah, I would agree.
If you were in that valley when that water was coming, there's just no way.
But how long ago was this? This is obviously not a recent occurrence, So how long ago are we talking about?
Last Ice Age?
Last Ice Age.
Yes. Wikipedia has a
18 to 13,000. If I actually read the thing, 18 to 13,000 years ago. Okay. So let me show this. So there's an ice dam around here. It breaks. Okay, so that's is it Spokane River? It's Spokane? How do you pronounce that? Spokane? Is Spokane?
I'd say Spokane River.
Yeah. Okay, and so that now makes, and it's a Palusi? Palaus? I don't know how to pronounce that either. I'm sorry, America. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Let's go with Palu. That sounds fun.
Palu.
Let's make it French for some reason.
Continental. Yeah, very continental of you. So there was an ice dam. So that's the Great Lakes, right? Or where the Great Lakes? No, that's not Great Lakes. They're over there.
No. But it was I guess it was. Sorry, it was smaller than the smallest Great Lake, right? I think it was.
Okay. So behind Cordilleran ice sheet repeatedly advanced to block the Clark Fork River. So this river was blocked by an ice dam. Behind the ice dam, it gathered, forming a massive lake, a glacial lake. Each time the ice dam broke, a torrent of water with 10 times the combined flow of all the world's rivers barreled into the surface. Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, that's scary. All right. The rushing floodwaters traveled southwest, converged to Columbia River Gorge, and eventually emptied into the Pacific. Okay. So, let's see. Lucy Falls, but they did have a river. Yeah. So this river. So it doesn't bend like the whatchamacallit? The
Grand Canyon.
Colorado.
Grand Canyon, yeah.
Yes, the Colorado River going through the Grand Canyon.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that what you would expect? Sort of this kind of shape rather than a really meandering shape from a like serious pressure.
A more direct path, yeah.
More direct path, yeah.
Now,
interesting.
Now, keep in mind the Grand Canyon was obviously carved. It's just, especially like they say, do it in a week.
Yes.
You're not going to get that unless the water is under tremendous amounts of pressure. And considering in the event of a global flood, water would just be flowing off all of the continents, I'm not sure how that would really work. Like, if anything, you should expect to see super deep valleys, say, surrounding mountains.
Well, I think the explanation given is that there was some kind of dam up due to sediment or some sort of rocks and things, and then when it broke, all of that water was released. I think they're sort of using it like the Spokane sort of event.
Yes, but then where are the features that we could see from that same event? It just doesn't add up. There are no vortices holes. There are no wave features. There are no...
So vortices holes are from the circular pattern of water. I mean, usually that's a vortex.
Yeah, a vortex forms within the massive rush of water, and it digs a pothole, pretty much.
There are no house-sized boulders that were picked up and thrown 5 miles down the river.
Doctor, I think you've got some background noise there. I don't know whether you're
sorry.
Currently trying to get out of prison by filing away the bars or something, but definitely coming over. Sorry, mate. So vortice holes and sort of sediment that's being carried by that massive onrush of water. And of course, like if that did happen a few thousand years ago, or up to 6,000 years ago, we would definitely see those boulders still there, right? They wouldn't be eroded away.
Also, I'm back. Sorry. Girlfriend is cooking dinner. She was using a whisk and a metal bowl.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. No problem. Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
She has headphones on.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll just find some more stupid for you.
There has been someone in the chat bringing up a couple points. For example,
sure.
You're not going to have large animals in a desert. I present to you the camel.
Yeah, is that are those animals camel-sized kind of thing?
The velociraptor is the size of a large turkey, and the other one is about the size of a sheep.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, we have seashells on mountains. That could be fun to talk about.
Yeah, I was going to get to that one, but I was going to sort of, hold off on it because I kind of know that one already, to be honest with you. But I just have a super chat come in from Brucifer Higginsworth. That is a glorious name. I just got to say, for Empire and Country and all that, Brucifer Higginsworth. One great thing about the Great Lakes is that they can disprove young Earth creationism and flat Earth. I fish 3 out of 5 yearly. Beautiful landscapes, great fishing. Yeah, look, Bruce, I think that, you know, if I visit US at any point, it'd be like things like the Great Lakes and Colorado and just the natural beauty of America. That's the one thing that does lure me into visiting America. And I'll probably get around to it
gorgeous.
someday. Right. Highly recommend Great Lakes.
The other problem on talking about the Grand Canyon forming within a week, first you'd have to have the entire planet covered in water to have a start-off location for that. Then where would the water go? The only way that would happen is if the land masses would somehow rise up and create a deeper ocean. That would be the only way that they could do that. And uplifts don't happen on that scale.
In addition, I mean, we should see bed forms within and all over the Grand Canyon that we just don't see. We should see deposition from young flood layers all around the Grand Canyon, which we don't see. But there's a lot of things we should see if it was a drainage site for a global flood that we just do not see.
Right.
We know what these look like because we can make them in a lab or find them in the wild.
Yeah, we use something called a flume chamber for that, if you want to play with those things.
They're so much fun.
I think the person that puts across this convincing evidence also has a model that's some sand in some water and shows you how all the layers were laid down. It's a interesting thing. But I do want to get to Brucifer's thing. How does the Great Lakes disprove? That was for you, Beamsy. How does the Great Lakes disprove young Earth creationism and flat Earth? Is Brucifer correct on that, or is that?
I mean, I'm not sure.
It's the same thing with the locks that you get here in Scotland. They're all glacial lakes. They could only have been formed through glacial motion if you look at the way that the sediment is actually laid out.
Right.
Also, I mean, we had back in the last ice age and previous ones, we had tons of glaciers coming out of the Great Lakes. And we can follow their paths. We can date the sediments that they left behind. Actually, some of that, or one of them, ended right over my where I'm currently living.
Oh, okay.
It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So and Brucifer is saying glaciers. When are the glaciers form according to young Earth creationism?
Depending on which one you ask. If you ask Ken Hovind, it happened as the flood was happening because an ice meteor crashed into the canopy and then the cold ice formed at the North and South Pole.
I'm just going to look up Answers in Genesis, which has all the correct information. Genesis
Ken Ham's version. It was the ice age happened shortly after the flood occurred.
Okay, so they can't agree on when this actually happened.
And the fun thing is, like, they give you they give you like 5,000 years for the well, not even that. Let's say 1,000 years for the ice age to happen. I don't know if you've ever seen a glacier. They don't move that fast unless they're surging, and that's not very common.
Okay. What would we expect to see? Well, I mean, they say it happened 4,300 years ago, and it lasted a few hundred years.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not happening.
Right. There's even surging glaciers happen over 100 years or a few hundred years.
Maybe if they were constantly surging, but we know the physics required for a glacier to start surging.
Right.
For the record, for the audience, a surging glacier often happens when there's, say, a ton of fresh water built up under a glacier and it just kind of breaks free and the ice on top rides along with it. So it temporarily moves like 10 times as fast as normal, but you can't really sustain that. They usually burn out after a few hours or maybe a week.
And thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate it. And Caught in the Middle has a $2 super chat. I hope you're doing well, Caught in the Middle. I was thinking about you, but I was sort of leaving you to your own devices. But best of luck with you and your father. Can we just say that it's Ken Hovind? Yeah, apparently, yeah, we've broken the spell. We're being honest. Yeah, we're talking about Ken Hovind a little bit. I mean, he's not the only person out there doing young Earth creationist. I think he certainly is doing the most ridiculous form of it, to be honest with you.
I should go through some of the ideas of what they come up with. Ken Ham's model, he is the one, he supports the expanding Earth and the fountains of the deep breaking open. Ken Hovind, he thinks an asteroid struck the ice canopy and the ice canopy fell and gathered around the North and South Pole. He has kind of changed it since last time, but he's got about 2 or 3 different things he puts out. Another one is the combination of his ice canopy breaking and the fountains of the deep breaking open. Who else is there? There is the one where just the standard expansion of the Earth, where the Earth expanded in size. They're about all the ones I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Maybe we should respond to a couple of Southwick's points there, because he's bringing up a couple things.
Sure. Yeah. No. Be my guest.
Yeah. Ever go looking for ourselves to see and understand what's going on in reality? Yes, I have over a decade of field work. We see a lot of this all the time.
So that's the reason why I had the good doctor and the good non-doctor Beamsy on board, because we these are people, like, if I go into a debate and I just sort of say it, it's not me saying what I bring up in debate. It's all I stand on the shoulders of giants, and these two good people have been out there studying their arse off, trying to learn everything they can, not to sort of try and disprove God, not to try and make anybody look stupid. They just want to know about rocks, where they came from, how they formed, just the truth. That's it. Just truth about our world.
I mean, so you can believe in a God if you want. That's perfectly fine. But when your holy book goes against things we can routinely measure, like routinely as in I did a bunch of this in high school.
Yeah.
You got to admit that it can't have everything right.
Right. So I really appreciate you guys coming on. I know you probably have thousands of hours, like, tens of thousands of hours in study between the two of you. So
I really don't want to know how long.
I dread to think, like it's I certainly, and this is why I really respect people with sort of things. So one question that I was going to save it to the end, but I'll ask it now. How do you go through and be a geologist like McQueen, for instance, and still believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old? How is that even possible?
Money and mental illness.
Yeah, sell out.
Well, I wouldn't. Sorry.
You're just plain out selling
money
out.
and or mental illness. There you go.
Well, I wouldn't sort of comment on people's mental states. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but you're saying that a lot of it is just they make money, because that is a sort of accusation leveraged against sort of mainstream, if you will, geologists. So, what would you say to the same accusation launched against you two, saying, oh, it's all a conspiracy, that they want the Earth to be old, so that's what they find, kind of thing?
Well, I would say I have yet to meet a geologist who doesn't work in the petroleum industry who makes over $150,000 a year.
But the petroleum industry is well paid.
Well, yeah, because you're working with oil.
Mhm.
Anything having to do with oil is going to be pretty well paid.
Okay. Is there any of other Southwick's things? Well, the Ark landed. Where is that now? We don't know. We haven't found an Ark. As far as I'm aware, I mean, do correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but as far as I know, we've found rocks in the shape of a boat. We've found, sort of outcroppings and things, but we haven't found an Ark. Nothing that would suggest no.
That boat-shaped outcrop. Say if you've got an incursion into the rock that's roughly got a barrel shape to it, and water's flowing down towards it, what's going to happen? Of course, it's going to look like a boat.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, it's a hematite. It's a hematite composite.
Hematite.
Yeah, it's hematite. What they actually found in that location.
Yes. That was the one in Turkey. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
Durumparana site. Durumpa site.
Yeah. But here's the interesting thing: for people who don't understand what it is, do you know what heman is?
Heman.
It's Latin for iron.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, are you going with like the stuff that's in blood, or?
No, heman is just Latin for blood. But if you you get hemanite, which is in blood. Hemoglobin, which is in blood, that's got iron in it. Then you've got hemanite, which is one of the basic raw elements to what we make with steel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if it's got a precursor of heman, it would have a high concentration of iron in it.
Right. Yeah. And so they found these what was supposed to be petrified wood, but it was hematite if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what But it was what was the guy's name? Was it Ron Wyatt?
Yeah, who was Ron Wyatt that one?
Yeah, sort of found these things, and I know from my own sort of research into doing these debates that Ron Wyatt is not a geologist or an archaeologist or any sort of credentials at all. He's just a guy that sort of goes around and finds these things and says, "Oh, that's fill in the blank thing from the Bible." He's not actually trained in anything.
Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't sure who you were talking about for a sec.
Yeah, so Ron Wyatt, he makes these discoveries.
Was he the one who claimed to find the site of the crucifixion and
I believe so, yeah.
I came up in a video I watched recently. I don't remember it though.
Do you remember that foreword that I sent you, Mark, in regards to that debate that Grayson was having with McQueen?
The forward. Oh, you mean the massive pile of pages that you sent him that you probably swamped him in?
I'm sorry about that, but yeah.
No, okay, sorry, Grayson. Yeah.
Yeah. The McQueen used what he called as a textbook, and I sent you just the foreword.
Yes.
Of it.
Yes. Yeah. Was that by Wyatt?
No, that's the sort of credentials that you can expect from Wyatt.
Right.
I've got it actually in PDF right here. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note that it hasn't also been just sort of mainstream geologists. Some evangelicals have called Wyatt fraudulent as well. It hasn't just come from our side, because even though we kind of say, hey, this is what the creationists believe, some of them do actually, pay attention to geology and paleontology and stuff. And even though they're creationists, they still acknowledge that the science is correct. And that's the thing. It's sort of, I dislike this idea, and I must admit I fall into it myself of saying, "Oh, this is what the creationists believe." That's not necessarily true. Another super chat's come through. I really thank you, Pinworm. I'm glad you're here. For $2 US, hematite, schmematite. Yeah, I think schmematite is a different mineral.
Or I think he's bad mouthing hematite. Unless that is, I don't think that's an actual mineral. Yeah, I think he's having fun. But hey, don't diss hematite. Hematite's cool.
Yeah,
pretty too.
But the book was by Derek V. Ager. It's the nature of the geological network, and it's put forward by a few dishonest people as a textbook. When as soon as you read the preface, you understand what he's trying to do. It's an idea that he's putting forward. It's not an actual reference towards anything real. Would be the best way of putting it.
Here's hematite. Looks like
Timothy
something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yes, Timothy, CERN's not doing anything bad. Like, they're just doing nuclear research, dude. Like, relax. They're not going to kill everybody. Relax, mate. They're just, it's an atom smasher. It's fine. It's,
Yeah.
It's fine.
Southwick, relax. I'm asking you, like, what would you count as good physical evidence for an old Earth? What do you think that would be? Oh, and no, apparently he's leaving.
That's a good thing.
Like
have a good day, Timothy. Yeah, have a good day.
That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, that was a little weird, sure. But it is people like Ron Wyatt and sort of some of the other geologists that they sort of have on site in Answers of Genesis that really, like, I don't know how you can come up with some of the answers that they came up with. I really don't understand.
After this, I'm going to send both you and Dino a copy of something that I don't want you guys to spread, but you can have a read of it, then you can make your own judgment on it.
Sure.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and I will be debating McQueen in the future, so I'll probably need that massive package from you as well. I know you have a massive package, Beamsy. So yeah.
I gotta admit, I have a tiny bit of beef with McQueen.
Okay.
A while ago, he was in a debate. I sent a few super chats asking him questions. He blew off every single thing I tried to talk to him about and just said, well, you should do your own research. You should look into this. I have looked into it a lot.
He did the same thing to me when I was asking him about Tuft and Tuffite. It was just, my explanation should explain it. Just go and do your own research. I have.
Maybe you should explain what.
That's why
explain what Tuff is. Explain what Tuff is. What is Tuff?
Oh, it's a volcanic debris, airborne usually.
Tuff and Tuffite is the formation formed through volcanic debris. If it's Tuff, it's got at least a 90% or higher content of ashfall. Lower than that, it's Tuffite.
So it's ash or dust that's been compacted, compressed, and it forms a rock that you call tuff if it's mostly ash, and tuffite if it's mostly dust.
Yeah, it's ash. That's ashfall that's gone through the lithification process.
Okay, and lithification is compression and compaction,
turning into a rock.
Right. Yeah.
There's also a chemical reaction that goes on within the rock itself that leaches some of the elements out there, and that's what cements it.
Okay. And just sort of, and don't know to comment that I'm being passive aggressive with my guests. No, I'm putting questions to them that sort of are. It's a little bit devil's advocate, so I'm going to be sort of. The whole idea is to find out why these claims don't stack up from experts. That's what we're doing today, and I hope you guys know I'm not trying to catch you out in anything or try and sort of I hope you know I'm only doing it because you have a wealth of information that can absolutely help people understand how these processes actually work and how we know the Earth is older than 10,000 years.
I mean, you don't come off as passive aggressive, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I think I've got one that Dino would be upset with one of the claims. Ken Hand's favorite one. He's even got a song. Billions of dead things laid down by rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. I think that one would be one for you, Dino, because you're the one with the biology and geology.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of rock
Paleontology.
layers that are biogenic, meaning they come from formerly living things.
Mhm.
And we do have them all over the earth, but they don't
Is
really
limestone
say what you would want
biogenic?
them to say. Yes.
No.
Yes,
Most
it
Yes
is.
and no.
usually.
Yes and no.
Okay. Disagreement. Fight.
Okay, well, often is, but not always.
If you've got a lithified limestone like marble, it's not. But if you've got a sedimentized limestone like chalk, yes, it is.
Okay. So marble and limestone is
Oh.
basically
Marble is a
It's-
limestone.
Maybe just to define it, limestone is a rock that's cemented by calcium carbonate. So that can happen in multiple ways, but it can just be deposited as a ton of calcium carbonate, usually through things like, say, diatoms or invertebrates with shells made of the stuff dying and falling to the seafloor. They
and
just
that
pile up.
lithifies, which is the
Yeah.
compaction. Yep. Okay. And so the White Cliffs of Dover, for instance, are a case of that.
I think so.
Yes, they are. They're made up about 80 to 90% of coccoliths.
Coccolithophores, yes.
No, coccolithophores are the creature that actually lives inside the coccoliths.
Oh,
Okay, but so their
Fair
shells
enough.
basically that creature's so coccolith.
Yeah,
Is
their
the
shells are called
shell and
coccolith. Yeah, and the coccolithophore is the algae that lives within that shell.
yeah.
Okay. So while we're talking about shells, so seashells on mountaintops. Let's discuss that little chestnut. So
Ooh,
yes.
yes.
Seashells on mountaintops, they can't possibly have gotten there. It must have been a flood that washed that was on top of the mountaintop.
Yeah. Sorry, young Earth creationists. Rocks move.
Mm-hmm.
So what can happen is sorry, trying to think on my feet here.
No, that's okay.
So
That's okay.
the crust of our planet is made up of a bunch of huge plates called tectonic plates. We can see these with seismic imaging. We can see where they separate and where they come together. When they separate, you'll get stuff like, say, a mid-ocean ridge, like the one running down the middle of the Atlantic. When they come together, you'll often get a mountain range, either that or a subduction zone where one plate goes under the other.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a mountain range forming, the rocks press super hard against each other and just kind of squish up. If you have two pieces of paper nearby, you can see this for yourself. Set them flat against your table and push them together. They'll bend upwards. The rocks do the exact same thing. And if one of these plates was formerly a seafloor, it's probably going to have seashells or whale fossils on it, and those get carried up along with the rock layers when the mountains form. Now you have seashells on top of a mountain.
Okay. So they were creatures that died while it was underwater, and then that layer moved with the plate tectonics up to the mountain. I've also heard said that they're not on mountain tops. They're usually far up mountains, but not actually on the mountain tops. Would that be fair to say?
Depends on the mountain. Depends on what rock layer is at the very top or what might be on the sides. And sorry, to address Big Bad Mama, you are correct. They're part of the lithosphere. I am trying to not be too complicated and failing sometimes, but I'm trying.
No. I really appreciate it. I know that's what you're trying to do, is to, sort of talk to people like me who don't understand a whole lot about it. So I really appreciate it. I really do. We've had a super chat coming from...
Sorry, I struggle with it as well. I struggle with trying to... I don't mean to insult this to anyone, but to dumb it down from what the terminology I usually use. It's because people are dumb. It's just that it's almost a completely different thing working in academia, isn't it, Dino?
Yeah,
Sure.
it's weird. It's like, oh yeah, I've been in high level science courses since I was a freshman in high school. This isn't
Yeah,
normal.
I get the same, when I'm talking networking and things, there's terminologies that you use, there's things that you use that if you don't work in that field or at least have experience in that field of some sort, there's no way you would understand what you're talking about, kind of thing. So I get that, and I really appreciate you guys sort of. I mean, dumb it down. It's such a bad term, isn't it? Because there's nothing dumb about the person you're talking to. They just don't have the experience in the field to know these terms. There's nothing dumb about them, kind of thing. So
No, that's why I hate that term. But there's no other term that I could think of.
well, you can just sort of say I'm simplifying it for a mainstream audience or something. I don't know. I'm really.
You can
I'm
say
really,
that.
You can. It takes a lot longer though. I'm trying to be time efficient here. I've had a super chat from Hillhugger. Thank you so much, Hillhugger. Much love, mate. Be nice to the geologists. They all have their faults, especially Beamsy. Would love to hear the guest favorite geology pun.
Everyone knows mine because they've been introduced to it before.
Yeah, you make it every stream.
Not everyone, just every so often.
I
Which
wouldn't
one
be
is that?
surprised if you decided to make it tonight as well. Oh man, I can't really pick one for mine. A lot of them are just spur of the moment, and I'm not great at remembering those.
You've always got the cleavage.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, cleavage is just fun to spring on people because they don't expect it.
Yeah.
And Hillhugger says, "Nice, Beamsy."
Hey, I've got
thank you so
a nice
much for
cleavage in my
joining.
hand right now.
Or
Yeah,
actually, you know what? I am a bit of a metalhead, so saying "rock on" to my fellow geologists, I like that one.
rock on. Okay, no, I like it. I don't have a favorite geology pun. I got to admit, I'm sorry, I'm failing you. I don't really have one.
Well, they did say geologists. Do you have a favorite engineering pun?
What do I have a favorite engineering pun? No, not really.
Yeah.
I have to think about that, to be honest with you. But
Oh,
yeah, I almost somebody said getting your rocks off count. Yes, I almost called the stream that, but I was worried about Google algorithm slapping me, kind of thing. So and Hillhugger, thank you so much for joining, new member. Lots of love to Hillhugger. Hillhugger's a great name, I gotta say.
I agree. Seems like we also have another person asking stuff in the chat. All right,
what interests you?
Huh?
What interests you? Like anything in the chat you want to talk about, just bring it up. That's not a problem.
They say, did that E word just claim that rocks move? Was that degree from Hogwarts? So there's a thing in physics. When you apply a force to an object, it moves.
Yes.
Rocks do that too. Due to various forces within the Earth's mantle and possibly some on the surface, there's a bit of debate. The crust of the Earth, or the lithosphere, can be pulled and pushed, so it does move. You might also be familiar with falling rocks. It's not magic, it's just physics.
That's physics, yeah.
It's the gravity of the situation.
And they move because of convection currents in the magma beneath the earth, kind of thing, as it.
I believe that's the predominant hypothesis. I am not 100% sure, though. I'm not too good going too deep beneath the surface.
Okay. Well, Big Bad Mama's got a correction for me. Thank you so much. Tectonic plates are actually the lithosphere, not the crust. The lithosphere is the crust and upper mantle. So thank you.
I addressed that earlier.
No, that's cool. That is cool. So maybe we should move on to sort of fossils and things for you, Dr. Deino. The fossil graveyards kind of stuff.
Oh boy. Well, we can kind of tie this into a previous subject. Most fossil graveyards occur in a flood deposit. Now,
Yes.
I did say flood deposit. That does not mean that there was a great flood. We can identify them in the rock record by looking at them when they happen today. See, what usually happens with a flood is you'll have a scouring surface, meaning the lighter sediments on the very top get carried away. Then you'll immediately have this big band of bigger materials like cobbles or pebbles, stuff like that. Then you'll go to sand, then mud. That's what a flood deposit usually looks like. And in most of these massive death assemblages, what we find is beneath them, there's a scouring surface. Then there's rocks and pebbles. Then there's sand and the bodies, which are usually then covered by more mud. This is very common. We have seen these happening today. And in fact, I was back in college. We went to a pasture, where cows live, and just looking at this cutout by the side of the river, you could see here's a flood. Here's a flood, here's a flood, here's a flood. Oh, here's a bone within the flood layer. Like, I've seen this. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so are these cases where there was a flood bearing them, or are these cases where there was, like, we don't necessarily need a flood to make these fossil graveyards?
Usually a flood was the cause of their death and burial. Usually. That's not always the case. There's some assemblages that can happen in, say, caves. Like, say there's just a hole in the middle of a field and animals fall down it routinely. You can have an assemblage there. You could sort of count the fossil I shared earlier as a small assemblage. 2 animals that just got buried by a sand dune. But yeah, these things happen today, and we can recognize them in the past.
What are you showing there, Beamsy? So the iridium layer in between the Cretaceous and the Paleocene.
It's the KT
what
boundary.
Mm-hmm.
The iridium layer.
Yep.
We find between the Cretaceous and the Paleocene era, all over the world, there is a slight mud deposit that is very rich in iridium. Iridium is incredibly rare on Earth, to the point of which it's negligible, except within areas in which impact events have happened.
Yep.
All over the world, we find that layer it consistently has a high concentration of iridium, and the closer you get to Chicxulub, the thicker the deposit, for obvious reasons. Below that layer, we find all the dinosaurs. Above that, we only find avian dinosaurs.
And I'll just get a picture of
the Chicxulub impact crater.
Yeah.
A rock the size of Mount Everest just smashing into the Yucatan Peninsula.
And that's only the 3rd biggest that's hit Earth.
Yeah,
Is it
see,
the 3rd? I don't. What's
so.
bigger?
The bigger one is Meteor Crater, Arizona, I think.
No, the Vedfort in South Africa.
Bedford, South Africa. Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. Wikipedia has a convenient listing. Measured in MA? Or, oh no, that's millions of years. Diameter.
You want diameter in kilometers. The Vedfort in the Free States of South Africa.
Yes, you are right. 160 kilometers. It lists Chicxulub as the 2nd at 150.
And welcome to the channel, Dennis Hobus and the Denisovian.
But
I'm not sure if they're a troll or not, honestly.
Well, I don't know, but welcome to the channel. They're now a member, so it's good to see you and much love to you.
Don't forget that's crater size and not impactor size because the impactor was
Right.
about 10 to
True,
15
true.
kilometers.
So I saw a question earlier that I was interested in. What formed Ayers Rock? Or actually, I mean, I'll use its real name. It's Uluru. Is the actual name of it.
I have not studied it. I know it looks cool.
It's a magmatic
the world's-
uplift that's been eroded.
Okay, so magmatic. So basically, it's so magma's lava that's underground or subterranean lava that has come up. So how did it form that rock kind of thing?
The rock itself was pushed up from underneath by an uplifting event, just purely due to a small hotspot that appeared underneath it.
Well, here, wait, Beamsy. At least according to what I'm reading about Uluru, it's mostly sedimentary.
The rock itself is a sedimentary rock, but it was actually compacted harder than the earth around it, and that's why it didn't erode at the same rate.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said it was magmatic.
No, the rock itself is a sedimentary. It's the same as the surrounding land, but about 5 or 6 kilometers down, a hotspot came underneath it just in that particular place. Over a couple of million years, it would have been pushed up and compacted, making it compressed sandstone far more than the surrounding sandstone, and that's why everything was eroded away around it.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. Sort of like Devil's Tower, but with the sedimentary rock.
Yes.
Okay, this is hilarious. I've got to show you this. This is Google being fun. This is so silly. No, it's cool. It's really cool. Check out this is what happens when you search Google for Chicxulub crater. Ready for this?
Wait,
Why?
wait. I can see that.
Do it again? Okay.
At least it makes an impact.
I got to see if it pops up for me. It does. It's awesome. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so that's the crater. So where is it? It's in the Mexico Peninsula kind of thing. Okay.
Yes.
Is that the crater? Is that it?
No.
The crater today is underwater.
No, you can't actually see it because
underwater.
it's also filled in. You can see some sinkholes. The only way you could actually spot it is by its magnetic anomalies if you fly over it. There you go.
Right.
You detect it using LiDAR?
A bit further down. I think it was further down than that. There you go. A false color image just on the next to the picture of the burning T-Rex.
That one?
Yeah.
That one. That one?
Yeah, that one, yeah.
I could be wrong, but you might be able to detect like the rim using LiDAR data, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
They actually found it because they were drilling in that area.
Oh, okay. But the iridium deposits would have led us towards it, right? Like we would have been able to home in on it with those iridium deposits from what you're saying.
That's what brought to attention of exactly what happened.
Right, right. So is this layer that with iridium, is it all mud? Is it all a mud layer all around the world?
It is all around the world. Might not be all mud, but it's distinguishable because of all the iridium in it.
Right.
Yeah.
So anywhere in the world, you will find that iridium layer.
Almost anywhere of the right age, yes.
Yeah.
But some of them are incredibly pencil thin, whereas others are a meter or two thick. It really depends on how close the sample is to Chicxulub.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, that's horrifying, actually. I mean, if it can throw iridium all across the world, then that would be an insane event. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Wow. That's scary, actually. But hopefully Jupiter does its job and catches all of those asteroids.
A good view of that, if you want to see it happening, is the Schumacher-Levy 9.
What is that?
What's is that a probe or something?
No, it was a comet that smacked into Jupiter.
Oh,
Ooh.
yeah, right.
It was torn apart by Jupiter's gravitational well, and then it was dragged straight in and smacked in, and it was found by the Schumachers and Dr. Levy.
Interesting.
By the way,
So yeah.
Well, just
No,
with
go
the
for it,
iridium layer, it is kind of weird that that's not even the most devastating mass extinction we have on record.
What would the most devastating one be?
The Great Dying.
And do we know the cause of the Great Dying?
It was the Siberian traps, right, Beamsy?
Yeah, the large igneous province in the Siberian region. It was caused by a flood basalt eruption.
Yeah.
So that's the Permian Triassic extinction event.
Yeah. So what happened was, I think there was a continental rift forming in northern Asia, if I recall correctly, or Eurasia, and just this massive flood of lava just surged out, covering an area. I forget. I think it was the size of a small continent, though I could be wrong about that. Regardless, it released tons and tons of carbon dioxide, turned the oceans into an acidic sludge, made the air burn with every breath. It's the closest we have ever come to a literal hell on Earth. It is scary.
The best way to describe of the way they think it happened, a hotspot was going through the lower Asiatic region, and at the same time that the continents were actually splitting apart. Through the cracks, instead of actually erupting like a supervolcano like Titan comes, instead magma welled up like a huge flood, and it just kept coming and coming. Gradually, the basalt formed a plug, so the magma spread out and then created a larger and larger area. That's why you can see some of the features that look like the giant's footsteps or giant's fingers, I think they're called. You get that in England. That sort of basalt feature is exclusively what you'd find from a flood basalt eruption. Just
so is that
basalt being forced up and out further and further and further.
So is that sort of like the basalt? Is basalt the one that makes those devil's steps and things like that? You know, the very sort of hexagonal shaped columns and things like that?
Basalt can make that. It is usually columnar basalt, but doesn't it usually form partially underground at least?
No, that's when you come up to the colanders, you'll find that that's part of a large igneous province. There are 9 across the face of the planet, but the Siberian ones are the largest. Those are formed because the magma is actually being forced out before it turns into lava, and the fingers are formed because as it's being forced out, it creates those finger-like effects.
Yeah. Also, apparently I wasn't far off in saying it was the size of a small continent. The area of the Siberian traps is just a bit smaller than the land area of Australia. So imagine if all of Australia was just lava field.
So instead of having the biblical flood, if they had the biblical lava flood instead, it would be more accurate.
This
kind of
what the Bible actually, what they try and say with the fountains of the deep breaking open. If the Earth split apart like they describe, that would happen across the entire planet, and a flood would be the least of your worries.
Gotcha. And speaking about hotspots, so if I understand correctly, so there's Yellowstone National Park is a hotspot, right?
Yeah.
So what's to stop that happening again?
Well,
it's happening now.
I don't think there's anything we can really do to stop it. We can only really mitigate its effects on us. And in the case of Yellowstone, that would be evacuating the majority of North America.
Yeah, the way the hotspots work is it's just a simple name to describe an upwelling of magma through the central part of a continent, and it actually shifts. Hawaii itself is a hotspot.
Well, through a
Okay.
tectonic plate, Hawaii is a hotspot too.
Well, I thought that Yellowstone was sort of one that it was a super volcano kind of thing. It was a lot bigger than any other hotspot in the world.
No, it's because it's under a landmass.
Okay. All right. So my question was sort of what's to stop it happening again? It sounds like nothing is the answer that we're getting there, or I'm getting there, I guess.
As,
The
I
reason
am not
why
a structural geologist, but as far as I know, there is nothing we could do to really prevent it.
You'd have to find some way to release the pressure, but you're talking about drilling kilometers down and somehow finding a way to operate in temperatures that metal melts.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I guess I guess what I'm asking is sort of what chance do we have of that happening in the foreseeable future? Is there any sort of spots that you would say, hey, that is a possibility that could upwell and create another great dying event?
I believe in the short term, Yellowstone is stable. We know what to expect if it were to go off, and we haven't seen any signs of it yet. That said, it does appear to go off every is it every few 100,000 years or a few million years? Let me double check.
Between 40 to 120,000 years. And it was about 60,000 years since the last one.
Okay. So
Yeah.
and that's a good point from Daryl there. 100% chance it will happen, just don't know when, and that's fair. And I do realize that is a very specialized department, sort of volcanology, which is I think it's volcanology. Yeah, that we're talking about there. But so can I ask? And I probably should have said this up front. It just shows how professional I am. But what is your speciality? Each of you, Beamsy, if you want to say first, what's your speciality?
I'm a stratigraphist. It's about understanding how the layers are laid down, what the layers are made out of, how they behave, and coming up with patterns on where we can tell where they are further down and in depth.
Yeah.
Right.
And I haven't gone to grad school yet, so I'm not super specialized, but general geology with a focus on stratigraphy, also just animal anatomy and evolutionary processes.
Yep. Fantastic. And so there's another one that I completely forgot about until now that sort of ties into stratigraphy, which is sort of the multistrata trees, polystrata trees, I'm sorry, that we all know and love. So
Beamsy,
what
you want
these
to talk
are...
about lycopods while I get some water?
Well, I'll just sort of explain what it is first. Basically, they say we found the creationists say that we found trees that have been preserved through multiple layers of strata. So those trees those strata layers could not have been put down over millions of years, because the trees standing upright would not be there, basically.
Okay, a good example of polystrata fossils would be around Nova Scotia in Canada. Those things are actually lycopods. They're club moss. What had happened is they grow to about the size of a tree, but they're actually a moss, so they don't break down in the same way.
Okay.
They also don't die the same way. They could be buried and they could keep growing. So you could actually have an area that floods continuously, and they could be kept buried deeper and deeper in layers of sediment. And gradually that sediment hardens and it leaves a cavity, and that cavity fills with stuff. And that's what they actually foresee as one. It's referred to as a karst fossil. It's a fossil. It's a fossil that the entity had rotted away, and it leaves behind a karst.
Right, and so some other, I presume it would be sort of a magma would fill that space left by
Sediment.
Or sediment. Okay, so it can be sediment as well, and then the sediment's compressed, presumably.
Yes.
And it forms a cast of the tree, but it is not the tree itself, or it is not this club moss itself. It's a
No.
cast of the club moss. Okay.
Other ones,
So
other ones
Yeah,
that you
go for it.
encounter are actually an upwelling or an uplifting, and they create a crack in there, and it could force another part of the sediment into there. So it had nothing to do with the sediment before, but it creates an incursion into it. It's say a big chunk of stone gets pushed into a cake would be the best way of describing it.
Stone get pushed into it. Okay. So this crack appears, and doesn't even look like a tree. Is that what you're saying? It's just a crack or
It's
superficially.
it superficially
Yeah.
looks like a tree.
Here.
Okay.
Mark, here's a link just to show the
Sure.
audience what a lycopod looks like. These things got gigantic.
Yeah,
Some of them.
They are sort of they're closely related to club mosses, so I just describe it as a club moss to make it as easy
But they're
as
not
possible.
this big anymore, I presume. I mean, I don't.
No,
they're not
no,
really
no.
a moss. They're sort of a thing of their own.
Wait, is that
Also-
30 meters?
Yeah. Also, their scales
yeah.
look awesome.
Right.
They look like dinosaur, or they look like a reptile scales. It's really cool.
Yeah, they're closely related to club moss. That's the only thing that is alive now that's closely related.
Right.
There is nothing alive today that is anything like them. It's
interesting. So how do you go about telling the difference between a cast that we have of these lycopods and actually, because they claim it's petrified wood. So I know it might be a basic question, but how do you go about telling the difference between petrified wood and a cast fossil?
I mean, first, obligatory mention that almost all fossils are casts. Really, there's a sliding scale of how well they've been replaced. Some fossils have been replaced on almost a cellular level, whereas others, like everything degraded inside and then it got filled up by another mineral. Petrified trees, or at least what most people are familiar with as petrified trees, are more the former. They're replaced tiny bit by tiny bit, usually by silica. But as far as I know, a lot of these fossils that we're talking about now, they're more so full fill-ins. I could be wrong about that, though.
normally you could, if it's one of these and it creates a cast, you could see features of the outside, but there'd be nothing on the inside. It would just be normal stone. It would be, you have the basic shape of it, but none of the features. Whereas if you go to the petrified forest in Arizona, or if you go to the Specimen Ridge in Yellowstone, if you cut one of those open, it almost looks like a tree, but it's made of stone.
But and that isn't a cast fossil. That's just where there's an upwelling through cracks kind of thing.
No, I was explaining the difference between petrified wood and a cast fossil. A petrified wood is the mineralization process in which the entire structure is replaced by minerals. It's literally everything gets leached out and then replaced by, in some cases, quartz, like in the petrified forest in Arizona. I forgot what it got replaced by in Specimen Ridge, but it was a silica.
It's usually silica, I think.
Yeah, it was silica, but
carbonates.
I always think it was a silica carbonate that was actually replaced on one at Specimen Ridge.
Let's see.
That's the two major types of fossils. When they refer to a cast fossil, it normally refers to the entity rotted away before anything got preserved, but it left behind an imprint of it. You usually see them with footprints. They're the best indication of what a cast fossil is. Then you've got ones that are completely mineralized. They're still a cast, but the process they go through makes them more of a mineralized fossil. It's a easier way to determine them.
Yeah. Also,
but if you see that
from the National Park Service says silica.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so we've gone an hour and a half, and that's pretty heavy topics for me. It's probably very basic stuff for you guys, I must admit. But I might sort of draw a close. But is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention? Any other sort of big misunderstandings that you'd really want to sort of say, hey, this is a massive misunderstanding on the creationist part?
Well, see, there's a bit of a I say a bit of a problem. A lot of people aren't interested in rocks or not interested in geology. So they'll often take claims about them or about geology at face value. Sometimes you need to do that with stuff. But that means that a lot of people can just be told stuff by a young Earth creationist and they'll believe it. And then it takes a long time, like a lot of scientific study to prove them wrong. What I would say to most people is if you hear a claim by a creationist and it goes against what the main body of science says, I would say look into what brought both the creationist and the scientists to their separate conclusions. In science, we have evidence for our claims. But with creationism, it usually falls back on, say, the Bible or a similar holy book. Science updates all the time with new information. The book doesn't. They think that that's a problem with science, but it's one of the best things about it.
Yep.
We take in new information constantly and build on what we've already learned.
Mm-hmm.
And when something is wrong, we'll admit it and we'll get better for it. And I think that's something important for people to realize. Like, we're not some shady people pulling the strings or something. We're not trying to sell you a story. We're just curious about the natural world, and we do our best to find things out.
And if you ask us, most of us are actually fascinated in what we do, and we will bore you to death with talking about it.
Yeah. No, I've noticed. And Beamsy, is there anything else that any misunderstandings you want to address before we go?
The biggest issue when you're talking about things a creationist claim, it's very difficult to prehensively make a list of what you could use to discredit them, because there is so much out there and their claims are so simplified. But because they're simplified claims, it takes 2 or 3 things to understand to discredit what they've basically put forth. They have little jargons and sayings and little songs and ditties, but to understand the way that tectonics work, you have to understand the way the mantle works, the way that the crust moves, the way that the lithosphere work. You have to understand the variation in temperatures. Also, you have to realize that continental crust is different to sea crust. The sea crust is thinner and heavier than continental crust. That's why it's usually the sea that goes under the continental crust.
Right, when there is a subduction zone kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Maybe before we go, does chat have any last questions for us?
Yeah. If chat does have any last questions, definitely get them out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you were asking about what he claimed as petrified trees. No, you'll never find a petrified tree between layers. You'll either find a cast fossil or either a foreign body pushed into that layer, or an incursion created by a crack forming between it.
Well,
Yeah, no,
there's
that's
a third
cool.
thing that can happen. A lot of these, as far as I understand, are found in carboniferous rocks. For people who don't know, that's where we get most of our coal today from. Back then, there wasn't a ton of bacteria that could digest wood or woody materials. So sometimes you could have a tree that, or lycopod, that died, and the trunk would just kind of sit there for a few decades. As a few decades goes by, you can have local floods, or most of these grew in swamps, so you'll just have layers constantly being deposited. So you have a dead trunk sitting there that just gets slowly buried. Sometimes the environment can change a little bit, and it looks like it's going through different rock layers. But it really isn't. It's just kind of sitting there, slowly getting buried.
Yeah.
And some of them can do that when they're alive.
Okay. Just one of the questions is, are most mountains not a result of tectonic slamming up one against one another, causing them to rise, and why they're fossils up there? Thanks, Beta Ray. So are most mountains not a result of tectonic slamming against one another, causing them to rise? And why are there fossils up there?
We did address that earlier, I think about 40-ish minutes ago.
So I'll take it, and if I'm wrong, do correct me, because I really, to be honest with you, I really wanted to learn as much as I could this stream and pick your brains. So it's basically that when tectonic plates collide, it can actually force areas that used to be underwater up, so then it's above water. As the plates continue to push against it, those can actually form into mountain ranges. The fossils were there under the water, but like sort of later on, after millions of years, they're actually now mountains. Is that correct?
Bingo.
Yep. Next question is, any thoughts on tsunamis from meteorite impacts being source of flood myths?
I mean, it's possible.
The origin of the flood myths can be tracked back to the Iraqi floodplain, because if you've read the Epic Chronicles of Gilgamesh, they talk about a massive flood, and we have geological evidence to show that actually happened.
Yeah. To them, it would have looked like their entire world was flooding, to be fair.
Yes.
Right. But
I mean, floods can be to the horizon, just water kind of thing. It can look, to all intents and purposes, it can look like the flood has swallowed the world kind of thing. But that's not actually the case. I think tsunamis from meteorite impacts and earthquakes and things like that, sure, they can do massive. I mean, the floods in Indonesia just swamped the entire coastline kind of thing. It was insane, and that was just from an earthquake, I believe.
I think late last year there was a fascinating fossil site that finally got described. I think it was where like the actual initial tsunami from the impact in the Yucatan Peninsula crashed onto the coast of North America and buried an entire ecosystem.
Wow.
Just fascinating.
And when did this flood happen?
Right on the dot when the meteorite impacted, so about 65.5 million years ago.
Wow, okay. So which meteorite? The Chicxulub, God, I can never say it. Chicxulub. Yeah, right. Okay, that's fascinating. So, so meteorite impact. It's not just the ash and the dust and the insane stuff that's going on. It's also prepare to be flooded as well. Absolutely. Yeah. I do have a question. I want to stump you with it. Are you ready? Because I did a little bit of research, not a whole heap, but I did a little bit. Is ice a mineral?
Oh boy.
No.
Yes and
ice by itself is not a mineral because it only contains hydrogen dioxide.
It's a stable chemical formula.
Hmm?
It's a solid.
Hmm.
Why isn't it a mineral?
Oh boy.
In the same way that what is it again? I can't remember. Micrite is a sedimentary rock and not a igneous.
Why is micrite a sedimentary rock and not an igneous?
Because it was mostly formed up with mud and not. It's a outcome of a lahar.
It's a what? Sorry.
It's what's the best way of describing it? The best way I can put it, it's basically a mudslide made up of igneous rock.
Okay. So there is the mudslide part is kind of an erosive process kind of thing. So it is sedimentary, but it's not like other sedimentary. It's not like other girls, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, ice is weird. I asked this same question to my glaciology professor in college,
Right.
and all he did was look at me like I was an idiot. So
Okay.
I can't really answer you. I can say
Yeah.
sort of, but also not.
Because
It
because
is
the
it is a
thing that I
solid with a
read, there
definite
is an
chemical
argument among
composition.
geologists whether ice is or is not a mineral because it
Yes,
does have a stable.
it is a solid
chemical
with a
composition, yeah.
definitive chemical composition and structure. So, sort of. But at the same time, I think one of the main arguments is it's liquid at room temperature, whereas most things we consider mineral are solid. But
aren't metals minerals?
I don't know.
I was just about to bring up mercury.
Yeah, that's where I was going too. Isn't mercury a mineral?
Yes, mercury is a mineral.
Mercury is an element.
Yeah, but are metals minerals? Because it's definitely a
minerals
metal.
that contain. There are minerals that contain mercury, but mercury itself is an element.
Well, yes, that's
for
true.
example,
That's true.
I'll actually send a
mercury
picture
sulfate
here.
is still liquid.
What was that?
Mercury sulfate is still liquid. Well, if it's mostly mercury, it's still a liquid.
Cinnabar is a solid, though.
Yeah.
Just getting a picture for Mark. It's
Oh, you dumped something in the chat. Was I supposed to show that, Beamsy? I'm so sorry, mate.
I've been wanting to explain that, but then you asked the silly question of if it's a mineral. But
it's not a silly question. Apparently, geologists are arguing about it. Like, so
it is
you know what I'm like.
It will be something
an argument, I'll find it.
Yeah, it is something that will be argued about in the aspect that most people they want to state that anything that is solid at room temperature with it that has sorry, my brain's not functioning properly.
That's all right. That's
non-organic and
stable chemical structure.
Inorganic with a definitive chemical composition and structure, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
so that's okay. We'll go to it. That's all right. Yeah. So, yes. So what's this in relation to, Beamsy?
That's one they claim to be a polystrat fossil. But you can actually see how that the strata creates like a divot, like a V effect.
Yeah.
But there's no features on it.
Wait, is that just a tiny fault?
Yes, it is.
Or an infill?
It's both. It's a fault that then was infilled.
Okay.
Okay.
But
so
if you look at the first picture,
hang on a sec. Hang on. The fault's just a cracking in the stone kind of thing. So fault line, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Kind of. Just on a big scale.
Yeah, but if you look at the first picture, that's what a cast fossil should look like of a lithophod.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you can see a little root coming off of it. That's cool.
See how you can see the features on the outside?
The features on the outside. Oh, the
Yeah.
scaling kind of thing. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
That's how you can tell that it's a karst fossil. Yes, that does go through 3 individual layers, but that's perfectly explainable.
Yeah, like I said, back then they would have stood there for hundreds of years after dying just because nothing decayed them.
Yeah. And then the sedimentary layers built up around them kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the top would have been torn off and then created something for it to be filled in with mud.
Yeah.
Or sometimes
okay.
ash, or sometimes lava, or there could be many things to fill it.
Yep.
But you can see that it's got perfectly defined features on the outside. But if you could look at where they've cut into it, there is no features on the inside. If it was a petrified, if it was actually a petrified wood, you'd see tree rings.
Oh, okay.
Or
right.
other parts of the organic structure, yeah. But it's just an infill.
I don't know if those things actually had tree rings. Those things are just weird.
I do not know.
All right, so I've started a fight over the ice thing in chat, which is great. I love it. Sorry everybody, I love it. Let's discuss ice. That's great. But thank you guys. I think that's about all the questions that we have, and I really appreciate it. Again, Dr. Deino's just starting up a channel, so if you want sort of on the ground level of a new upcoming geology channel, I think I've got your link in the thing. Oh, your link is actually in the description. I put it in the description. The title is what I should be saying. But I'll put it in the description as well. I'll tag it in there.
I'm firmly in the school of ice is not a mineral.
Okay. Well, it's a bold claim.
Yes, it isn't. Maybe.
Yes, it isn't. Maybe. Okay, so that I haven't heard anything that confused since I last talked to a flat earther, quite frankly. Okay, so you're in there, and Beamsy, you don't have any links at the moment. Is that correct? You're not running anything at the moment.
Not really. I'm still dealing with a few things on the other end, but it's all good.
Yeah. And so Dr. Deino's about to come out with his first video, which is
hopefully
great.
By the end of the week.
Hopefully. Well, sometimes it takes longer. From my experience, sometimes it takes longer than you think. Like you get really optimistic about how fast and how much you can put out videos. Trust me, it actually can be a longer process than you expect. So no pressure, but if you are interested in geology and paleontology and things like that, definitely hit him up. Yeah, and I think that's about all I wanted to bring up. Tomorrow I've got aimbot, so making some moral judgment on people that quite frankly deserve it and want it. So yeah, that's going to be fun. And if you had some fun here, or if you learnt something new, hit like. If you want to see more stuff like it, debates and things, do subscribe. Is there anything else that you guys want to add while we're wrapping up here?
Make sure to give the stream a like, folks. Help Mark out too.
Yeah, help me out, man. I gotta say, like, you guys are amazing. Like all of that stuff. Like my brain feels a bit assaulted, to be honest with you. No fault of yours. Just that's a lot of information. I really appreciate
the movement on that.
Sorry.
You just blame the movement on that fault.
Just blame the movement on that fault. So is that another geology joke? Is this what I'm going to get from now on? Is this our lives now, Beamsy? Just geology jokes.
And also, speaking of assaulting minds, that debate with Dave McQueen, if you want a partner, I would love to tear him apart.
I think that's a one-on-one. I'm not sure. If I can suggest it. That should be more than possible. I can suggest it. I'm not sure what Donnie's criteria is on whether you need to have a camera on. I think he has that criteria, just because people like to see somebody debating with they can put a face to, kind of thing. So there's a few things to go through if you do want to do that. I can certainly suggest it, though. Of course, McQueen would have a partner. I'm not sure who would be partnering with him, to be honest with you.
T-Rock.
You think it'd be T-Rock?
Yes.
Or imagine if it's Hove and we can have a Dr. Deino on both sides of the debate.
Dr. Deino off. I'm sorry, John. I'm really sorry. My brain it's had too much. I can't. It's my failure as a human. I gotta say, and I don't want to kick these guys up too much.
I've got 30 or 40 more points to add to different things to discredit, but I'm trying to behave.
Well, anyway, I'll wrap it up here. Thank you. Look, guys, it's amazing. We can always do another episode sometime if you guys are up for it, and I'm more than happy to do some more research on dumb stuff that creationists say. I think I brought up a few sort of really bad points that you could shoot down, and I really appreciate everything you're doing. It really does help me out a lot, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just love talking about the stuff because it's just one of my interests.
Same.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so, since you are working in that field. I would hope so. But thank you so much, and to everybody, be kind to yourself and to each other. If the guys are up for it, we can talk more geology at some other point, and there'll still be more debates and more discussions going on. And don't forget to check out Dr. Deino.
Rock on.
Cheers, everybody.
Hey, that's my line.
Bye-bye. Rock on. Oh, that's terrible. That's it.
You bastard.